Hello, today is November 4th, and we are reading our gospel for today, John chapter 11, verses 32 through 44. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him, and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. We have here the raising of Mary and Martha's brother Lazarus, remembered here in John. And for our purposes, we start in media res. We start in the middle of things, where Jesus, at this point in John, in chapter 11, Jesus has been traveling to Bethany, where this family he knows lives. He has been traveling because he has heard that Lazarus has died. So Jesus goes out of his way at this point in John's narrative to go and see Lazarus. And in some ways, we don't quite know what Jesus is going to do. Jesus is greatly disturbed. Jesus weeps at the sight of the mourners. Jesus weeps at the thought of the dead man. Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. We have here in John, Jesus is at his most enigmatic. Sometimes in Mark and the other Gospels, we get a sense that Jesus is impatient or Jesus is loving or kind. But here, Jesus is acting without there being any indication in the narrative of what he's going to do. There's no indication for the people who are meeting him, Mary and Martha, of what he's going to do. Notice Mary comes to Jesus and says, "If you'd just been here, my brother wouldn't have died." She has no thought of Jesus is going to bring him back. It is one of those things you say because that's all you can say. If you'd just gotten here sooner, he'd still be around. I bet you could have done something. But now it's too late. You took too long to get here. And I'm sure Mary said this in her grief. And Jesus does not correct her. He doesn't say, "No, don't blame me. This is not my fault." No, Jesus instead sees her weeping and her companions weeping, and he gets more disturbed in spirit. We get this picture of Jesus as someone who also mourns. Now, for John, Jesus is perhaps portrayed as is most powerful in the Gospel of John. But here, Jesus is simply a mourner along with the others. And he comes to the tomb. And we're told that Lazarus has already been in there for 4 days. Now, for most funeral rites, Jewish funeral rites, funerary beliefs, there is a period of 7 days in which you sit in Shiva. You sit in mourning for the one who has passed. And you're supposed to basically do no work, sit in your home, and it is a time for the family to be together. So Jesus comes about over halfway through this sitting in mourning. And he comes out to where the tomb is. And at this time, especially, the practice was to make sure the dead body was in the tomb the day it died. And maybe people would check on it, but you wanted that body out of your house. You wanted it away. There was no embalming. There was nothing of that matter. Bodies do pretty quickly begin to turn. And as Martha says, Martha being the practical sister, Lord, it smells bad. Don't go in there. It's been 4 days. And that number 2, 4 days, is an important number. We're not yet to the end of the period of mourning, but that 4th day, the turning of the 4th day, is when it is believed that someone is well and truly dead. For 3 days, there is a period where the soul was thought to linger in the body, and maybe that's linked to practical experience of someone seeming to convalesce and maybe even get to the point of death for 3 days, that you have to wait a bit to see if they are truly dead. But then on the 4th day, well, this is the end point. And so that number is really important. And so this is, again, in John. John is also known for extreme examples, hyperbole. Jesus does the miracles of Jesus are abundant miracles. So Jesus doesn't just heal a dying man. Jesus brings to life the most truly dead man he can. He brings to life Lazarus. This is the abundance message that John always brings to the miracles of Jesus. And Jesus says, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" And Jesus looks upward and speaks to God. And there's a sense that there's no power going out of him. He doesn't have to ask for this thing. In some sense, at the moment the tomb is open, at the moment maybe even Jesus was walking down the hill, Lazarus is awake. And so Jesus simply talks to God. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this in the sight of this crowd, that they might also see your miracle. And Jesus calls Lazarus out, and the dead man comes out. Now, this crowd remembered this. This crowd hung on to this. And in the time after Lazarus, especially in the narrative of John, Jesus is arrested, John implies, because of this. Because the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin see this work of power as particularly threatening. John frames that this is the turning point. This is the decision point. And their response is to get rid of Jesus, to use the power of the Roman state to kill him. And Jesus' response is not to respond in revenge or to fight back or to raise an army, but his response is to come back, is to respond with life. And that's the Christian response. That's what we are being called to do as Christians, is that Jesus responds to death. He responds to sorrow with life. Jesus responds to his own death with life. And not just with life, but life abundant, life enough for all. That is the source of our hope. That is what we put our faith in. Not in the law, not in our own powers, not in our ability to defend ourselves, but we put our faith and our hope into a God and a Christ who responds to overwhelming death with overwhelming life. Thanks be to God. I hope you're having a great week.